You're listening to the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WYBC.
WCYTV
Here on the Daily Signal.
Good evening and welcome to the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated first on 93 WIBC. A ton of news that just will not stop. And it's weird to start a story with a breaking headline about approval ratings, but this is a major trend shift. Normally, in the first year of an administration, the opposition party gains a considerable amount of traction. It's pretty much been this way since all the way back to the first time this was tossed aside in modern American insight, which was Reagan's first term. In his second term, there was a slight, just again, a very, very slight change, but coming off of the Mondale victory, not unexpected. So approval ratings have seemed to start trending upward, not only for President Trump, who's essentially getting back up to his ceiling, but then the Republican Party and the kind of generic congressional ballot as well. Very, very, very unusual if you're going by traditional politics, but the age of traditional politics is very well and gone. So let's dig into some of this stuff. According to the Decision Desk HQ polling averages, as well as the Real Clear Politics polling averages, after a week of divisive foreign and domestic policy decisions, President Donald Trump's approval rating has shifted upward by 3.5 points, leaving him in a narrow 4-point underwater in net approval. That's the ceiling for Trump. If you know anything from his first administration, that's about as high as he can get before you get into the independent no man's land, the kind of never Trump Republican crew clinging on, few though as they may be, and then your local barista and professor at Columbia University on the other side. So with an increase in favorability, however, comes a pretty wild swing in averages. So J.D. Vance has increased in favorability. Elon Musk has increased in favorability. The Republican Party has increased in its favorability. An additional 3.5% believe the country is on the right track. The Republican generic ballot, which is not supposed to increase this time of year again. August is a slow month. Things usually start trending towards the opposition party. It is up 1.5 points. But that is not the worst news on the polls and the ratings. According to a new article by the New York Times, we are in a serious voter registration crisis for Democrats. So I want to see if we can actually get these particular pictures pulled up, because the 30 states and the District of Columbia that allow individuals to register based on party show that Democrats have lost in these 30 states, so just these 30 states, Democrats lost 2.1 million voters between 2020 and 2024, whereas at the same time, the Republican Party gained 2.1 million voters in those states. Also, Republicans are twice as likely as new voters to come out and vote in off-year elections than Democrats who are new to the fold. So add these two things together, and it is a very, very serious crisis point. But why? Why are the numbers starting to swing in this direction? As we've said before, it's because the Trump administration has now added into his illegal immigration approach how he is dealing with crime. And the Democrats are acting as predictably as you could expect. So, of course, as we know, the Trump administration has federalized the Washington, D.C. police for 60 days. The National Guard has also been deployed, 800 National Guardsmen from the 74th in Washington, D.C., specifically outside of places like Union Station, where there was lots of crime and where there was lots of vagrancy going on. And I bring up Union Station not only because J.D. Vance, the Vice President, Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth, Stephen Miller, the Deputy Chief of Staff, were there today and, well, entertainment ensued. But when I'm in D.C., I spend a lot of time right next to Union Station. And up until now, it was a very dirty, disgusting, unsafe place to be. Now, it's filled with two things. Number one, clean floors and National Guardsmen. And then number two, people who were very, very, very upset that J.D. Vance toured Union Station and met with the National Guardsmen today. For those who are listening, these are not a diverse group of individuals. Essentially, any white male with a testosterone count below average and a white girl with a humanities degree, that's who's making up this crew.
You Pete, Nazi!
Free Palestine. Yes. Trump dispatches the National Guard. Free Palestine. Okay. Housing and climate justice. Yes. Again, the usual unhinged members of such young, upstanding individuals. It's fantastic. So thrilled that these crew are out there shouting again because crime led to the Trump administration dispatching the National Guard to D.C. Good. That reminds me of that. Yeah. Fantastic. And then Elise McHugh, our very own Elise McHugh, was on the show yesterday. Also got some excellent footage of one of these particular protesters, we'll call them, arguing with the police, who pointed out that the keffiyeh that she's wearing is cultural appropriation, which is really funny. Here's how that conversation played out.
Appropriation by wearing a scarf that is trying to stop a genocide.
The scarf trying to stop a genocide. By the way, if you walked down one of these city streets in a sombrero, I guarantee you that she would lose her ever-loving mind about cultural appropriation for you. But she's calling the keffiyeh a scarf. Again, you know the scarf for those who are just listening, not watching on the live stream like you should be. The pro-Hamas terror organization garb that up until a couple of years ago was just the opposition force in every Call of Duty game. That's what all of the terrorists were wearing. So anyway.
I think that's appropriating a culture. Okay, speaking one way, how is that appropriating Palestinian culture? How is my wearing a keffiyeh appropriating Palestinian culture?
Tell me.
You're the one who said it. You're the one who said I was appropriating Palestinian culture by wearing a keffiyeh scarf.
So you're Palestinian?
I support Palestine.
Oh, you're not Palestinian, so you support... Oh, the white girl from Berkeley supports Palestine. Oh, wonderful. The IQ in that room rose considerably as soon as that protester crew caught their Ubers back home. Not riding, public transportation, because they don't actually do that. The wealthy little college students, they hop, skip, and jump on their own little ways home before it gets dark outside. Now, it is really funny. Vance took a lot of this in stride, and as he has a very considerable ability to do, visiting troops, raising morale, and letting the left act the way they are, here's the vice president.
In just the past 9 days, we've seen a 35% reduction in violent crime. We've seen over a 50% reduction in robberies. We are seeing really substantial effects because these guys are busting their ass. So I want to come here, highlight what they're doing, say thank you in person, obviously pass out a few burgers, but most of all, just send a message to the American people. Look, we don't have to live like this. We do not have to allow our cities to be taken over by violence and by disorder and by chaos. You can actually do stuff. You can actually bring law and order to communities. You've just got to have the political willpower to do it.
How about that? Again, this is just like the illegal immigration issue. You don't need fancy new laws and restorative justice super duper principle. You don't need a bunch of nonsensical socialist utopian vision garbage that doesn't work. How do you know it doesn't work? Because all of these blue cities, as soon as they started voting Democrat, got worse and worse, and never once, not a single one of these cities has gotten better. The only thing they can brag about, by the way, is when Mayor Woohoo of Boston gets up in front of everybody and says, we're the least worst city. Ah, yes, what a badge of honor. Incredible. When the Democrats get out in front of the country and try to suggest you need all these laws, and then Trump comes in and says, no, close the border, and then paint it black, which we're going to get to a little bit later. And then, dispatch the National Guard to LA, and then it fixes it. Dispatch the National Guard to DC, and then it fixes it. I mean, it's incredible. And no matter how much everyone else out there wants to cry and whine and complain, FBI Director Kash Patel got up in front of the nation this afternoon, just before the show, and revealed that, it turns out there was a lot of crime, and a lot of arrests have been made.
Absolutely, Larry. Look, thanks again to President Trump, his initiative to clean our streets and rid of violent criminals starting at our nation's capital. Let me speak to just briefly what the FBI did last night. FBI had 41 arrests last night, including 6 gun seizures and 8 drug seizures. That's 8 drug seizures and 6 guns off our streets. Now, the totality and the brilliance of the Trump administration and the Department of Justice combining forces with DEA, ATF, and the U.S. Park Police and our local law enforcement authorities. In just 1 week alone, we have 550 total arrests of violent criminals, including dozens of firearms and 40 drug seizures.
Wow, it almost appears as though there was a significant issue. Radio crew, we got to send you to commercial. Be back in a minute. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast. Now, for the live stream side of things, there is a little bit more entertainment that went on at Union Station today, because again, Vance is a lot more like a normal American than the goofballs that we're going to get to a little bit later, like Senator Blumenthal and Chris Murphy, who act like children. Vance just having a good time trolling a lot of the crowd who were screaming and missing their intro to apologizing for male genitalia lectures. Here's Vance making fun of the crew with Hegseth.
This is the guy who thinks people don't deserve law and order in their own community.
So I'm going to make this clear because we don't quite know. I don't want to speculate whether the individual was booing or mooing. Given the attendees of the event, it's quite likely the heifers could have broken free. But some of those university classes don't get out till around noon. And, again, just don't want to speculate. Again, Stephen Miller, who's known for getting out there and making a lot of cases, got some good points in. There is one story, however, which is just chef's kiss incredible. So Amy Cho, over from NBC News in Washington, got out in front today and posted a video essentially trying to claim that, hey, there's this guy that was yanked out of his vehicle. DC police federal agents detained a man at the National Mall. He appeared to be trying to escape. Then he was quickly tackled to the ground by several agents and was screaming in Spanish, "I'm not a criminal. I work here. I want to be with my family." Well, wouldn't you know it, we've got the footage here for you. And, well. So he's talking to the federal police. They tell him, put your hands against the car. And then he tries to run for it. And they tackle him because he's built like a Twinkie. So then he starts doing his screaming, he's not a criminal. Okay. Great. Now, I'm sure that you can guess exactly where this is going. Because, come on, we all know. The liberals went out in full force immediately, and they started crying. They started saying, "His crying, it just hits me in the gut." Oh, reminds me of Selena Gomez. "I just don't know what to do. I'm so powerless." And we will probably never be told who he is, why he was stopped, or if he was here illegally. And you saw this from everybody. I mean, and I'm not just talking about the far left individuals, even some individuals on the never Trump right were also suggesting, "Oh, this is terrible, too much, oh, it's awful." Well, it turns out this is an individual from Mexico, an illegal immigrant named David Perez Teofani, has a final order of removal, entered the United States illegally 3 times, was previously arrested in Fairfax County on January 30th, 2024, was charged with, you could have guessed, aggravated sexual battery against a minor under 13. Felony indecent liberties, proposed sex acts. This individual repeatedly, according to the reports, tried to rape minors, children, tried to rape children. Pedophile. And by the way, a lot of those tweets are currently being deleted, whining, "Oh, poor him." Now, I will say this because Amy then came out and said, another update, by the way, this is right before the show. Fairfax County court records show the charges were later dropped. They were dropped. The charges were dropped against him. And she includes a Latin phrase, "noli proquesi," and says, "I've reached out to the Fairfax Commonwealth Attorney's Office for comment, but haven't heard back yet. An ICE spokesperson tells me prosecutors refuse to prosecute." Now, it just so happens that the particular Latin phrase, "nulla prosequi," means they refuse to prosecute. So she's trying to frame it as though ICE is suggesting, no, the Biden administration and certain Democrat-run parts of Virginia refused to prosecute for, well, illegal immigrant child abuse. We'll be back in a second with Senator Eric Schmitt of Missouri. Don't go anywhere. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast.
This is the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIBC.
Be aware that some of the cities in red states around the country, they've got rough crime rates, and some of the senators, they're a little fed up with the shenanigans from intelligence agents. Well, we have one of the guys that deals with both, Senator Eric Schmitt from the great state of Missouri. Great to have you, sir, and go Cards.
That's right. Go Cards. It's good to be with you.
Let's dig right in here because, of course, you've got a new book coming out, or is it out already? It's out today.
It's out this week.
As of yesterday. The Last Line of Defense, How to Beat the Left in Court. Your time as Attorney General in Missouri is a fireworks-ridden time for sure. There was a lot of legal battles going on constantly. Now we're seeing the same stuff play out on a national scale. So just as an aside real quick, what's it like to go from watching some of the same, use the courts in whatever way you can to fight Missouri freedoms as your opponents did back in the day when you were AG, now seeing that same strategy played out on a national scale?
Well, I think for me, and the reason why I wrote the book, The Last Line of Defense, is that, it's important to remember exactly how close we were to, I think, losing it all until the fever broke in November of 2024, right? President Trump wins. We're talking about all those great successes, defending those successes in court now. But you got to remember, this was a time of lockdowns, of compulsory COVID shots, of DEI struggle sessions, of blatantly open borders, and a censorship regime that was really, really vast and oppressive. And so when I was AG in Missouri, we stood up and we fought back on all that stuff and we won. And the lesson, I think, in the book is now we've got a playbook. It takes courage. We need to embrace the idea of using the legal system to fight these fights. I think conservatives for a long time ceded too much territory there. We were fighting in the legislature. We were fighting in the executive branch, but not so much in the courts. And now we've got a Supreme Court that, is on average and generally speaking, is relatively conservative, views the law as it is, not how they want it to be. And so we have a terrain now we can fight and win to defend the things we believe in. But yes, this is playing out now. Now that I'm in the Senate, you see it. We're doing some things to kind of rein in some rogue activist judges. But by and large, President Trump and his legal team, they're being successful as these cases move up sort of the ladder, right, to the appellate court, to the Supreme Court. There's no more nationwide injunctions. They're winning on deportations, all that sort of core stuff. So the point of the book, Last Line of Defense, is to say this is a turf we have to fight in. If we do it right, we can win.
Well, and it's definitely something that we have to fight because it's not as though it's just an ideological difference in how one acts within the realm of the law. And we're seeing this with a lot of the intelligence agents from around the country who, during the time period that you described, sure, they might have very, let's say, high quality, high belief estimates that a COVID-19 lab leak came from in Wuhan under official Chinese Communist Authority. But they didn't follow the law by refusing to answer questions in the Senate about it, in the House Oversight Committee about it. And we're just supposed to pretend that bygones be bygones now? That's not what the American people deserve. And I got to say, I'm actually really happy we're seeing either it's Tulsi Gabbard or in the Senate or in the House going after some of these rogue, not just activist judges, but intelligence community agents and individuals in the previous administrations.
Yeah, I think this is one of the reasons why they were so terrified that President Trump would get back into office, right? Because he's now got a team that's declassifying a lot of stuff that probably should have never been classified in the first place. We're learning a lot more about what the FBI was up to, what the intelligence agencies were up to. And actually in the book, Last Line of Defense, we kind of take you inside the room. I took the deposition of Anthony Fauci in the Missouri versus Biden lawsuit. And we asked him a lot about the lab leak theory. And we asked him a lot about, sort of, it's interesting. You emailed a friend, Dr. Fauci, that masks were ineffective. Why were you telling Americans that they couldn't go to school if they didn't have a mask on their face? So catching him in a lot of this hypocrisy. The truth is they were obsessed with power and control. And they were exercising in ways that you could never imagine during COVID. But beyond that, Also in the book, we took the deposition of Elvis Chan, who was the FBI agent in charge of Northern California, who was pre-bunking the Hunter Biden laptop story. The FBI had it. They knew it was real in 2019. Yet in 2020, they're telling all these big tech companies this is a Russian hack and leak deal. So, the rot is pretty deep here, and it's going to take some time to sift through a lot of firings, but there needs to be, greater accountability, no doubt.
This is something that I've tried, at least as ardently as I can, to encourage people to be a little bit patient. I know that a lot of people are kind of as excitable as the guy screaming about the van down by the river.
When you're living in a van down by the river!
That we need to arrest people right away, throw them in jail, we'll worry about everything else later. Well, if you aren't very careful about the charges that are levied, about the evidences that are brought forward, then you risk like a Sean Diddy Combs situation where you just slap him with RICO and then he walks mostly free. And it's something that I don't want to see these intelligence agents or Anthony Fauci, which, again, now we're finding out even Biden's own DOJ was cautioning against mass scale auto pen pardons. There's so much, like you said, things that should never have been classified that were just pasted over as though, well, Schmitt's just some country bumpkin attorney general from a state in the middle of the country. Certainly, he's never going to be back on our doorstep again. Oh, how the turns have tabled.
Yes, that's right. It's funny because in the Missouri versus Biden lawsuit that I filed, one of the plaintiffs was a guy by the name of Dr. Jay Bhattacharya, who was Anthony Fauci was trying to destroy him because he was talking about natural immunity. Guess what? He's now head of NIH. RFK Jr. was on day 3 of the Biden administration, was one of the first people that got social media companies to censor. Guess what he's doing now? He's inside the castle as well. So I do think that part of what I talk about in the book is that disruptors at that time who were calling BS on all this are now in other positions where we can effectuate real reform. And I do think that's a positive thing. And it's also affirming, I think, of of the people of this country. They saw everything that happened over 4 years and they sat in their own jury box and they rendered their own verdict, which was they didn't like the lawfare. They didn't like all this nonsense. President Trump's back and America's back.
Well, while being simultaneously told, Senator, to keep their hands off, to keep their uneducated, unwashed hands and eyes out of business of hires and betters, whether you're talking about the Terry McAuliffe parents stay out of education thing against Glenn Youngkin in Virginia, or the medical practices. Oh, you don't understand medicine like we brilliant transgender affirming doctors do. And now the Americans are given a seat at the table yet again. And this is one of the reasons that I advocate for books like these from people who have been in the position, in the courtroom, and are now sharing how this works with Americans, because Americans have a responsibility to know how this stuff works. I hate gatekeeping from all of the betters, the higher ups. It's ridiculous.
Well, think about it. What they wanted was and really, honestly, the dream of Woodrow Wilson, which is where all this nonsense kind of began. It's the rise of the quote unquote experts, right? That the people don't know they don't know what's good for them. So you devise this managerial class, this administrative state that filters everything and slows everything down, but then also says, don't believe your lying eyes. Like during COVID, the experts, the so-called experts, they were wrong about so many things. They made up the social distancing. They made up the efficacy of masks. But then you had, interestingly, funded by a lot of NGOs and your tax dollars, the rise of the fact checkers and the verified teams, because mainstream media lost all credibility. They had to create these special bureaus to fact check, and they were in on it too. So no wonder faith in a lot of these institutions at an all-time low, and it should be, because the American people have been lied to for so long. So you have to get through the business of truth telling first to restore any kind of trust.
Well, that's how you and I met, is that during this whole truth, they made the disinformation governance board, all of these fact checkers running amok. I threw up the Ministry of Truth account to make fun of all of these goofballs, because as long as you slap a Harvard degree up in front of everyone and say, look at all of the fancy, expensive education receipts I have, suddenly you're going to believe in my grand scheme to turn grocery store aisles into one-way lanes, which I'm amazed that was treated as some kind of gospel truth that, as long as you only walk down the left side of the grocery store aisle, you'll be safe.
Well, and it's much more nefarious than that, too, because, and I talk about this in the last line of defense, I think you have to take the DeLorean back in time to remember all of this, because certainly they don't want us to remember any of it. And it's natural for us to kind of try to move on with our lives.
No, they're actively memory holing it.
Absolutely. And they lie about it too. And the other thing is, this is a playbook for them. So in the book, I talk about what's our playbook, but their playbook is manufacture an emergency, other people. So the othering of people, like, for example, the person on that grocery stall aisle, you need to avoid them because they may kill you, right? Like, they may kill you. And if they don't wear a mask, they're trying to kill you. And if they don't take the vaccine, they're actively trying to kill grandma too. So all of this stuff they did to create disunity in this country. And then what do they do with the power? They silence dissent. And that's the formula. So it won't be the last time we see it. It won't be the last time we see it. It'll be, look, it'll be a climate emergency, or it'll be whatever. Or Trump's a threat to democracy. We look at what they tried to do to democracy to save it. They were literally destroying it. So anyway,
what Biden did, what Biden's handlers did in response to Trump administration 1 is nothing compared to what they absolutely will do without any pretense, without any necessary constitutional ability after Trump 2.
Well, look at what the New York Times. Look at the New York Times got an op-ed out. The Democrats, they campaign on this. If they get back in power, like if they have what we have, the House, the Senate, and the White House, they will eliminate the filibuster. They will pack the Supreme Court. They will add 2 states to the union. They will federalize elections. The New York Times op-ed actually advocated for abolishing the Senate altogether. These folks, it is not about, like, we're talking about structure and individual liberty and protections and all those things. They're talking about blowing all that up just to get their way. Right. And again, getting back to the courts and the last line of defense and how we beat them in court, why I wrote the book is, we can do it, but we better wake up and we better engage and we better fight back, because we're going to wake up one day and they're going to win. Nice guy,
goofy goober. Well, let's just all play nice and get along. Absolutely not. There are things that are greater and at stake. So I don't normally do this when we actually discuss kind of new books and bring guests on. I'm going to recommend something a little bit different here. So obviously you should go read The Last Line of Defense, How to Beat the Left in Court by Senator Eric Schmitt. I'm going to recommend you get the audiobook version though, because Senator Schmitt, you're one of the guys whose voices, like, can you imagine listening to a book by Mazie Hirono? I'd jump out a plate glass window. It'd be awful. So I'm telling you, go listen to it. Excellent stuff. Grab it on the Kindle. I think there's a special deal on that right now as well. That's where I read it. So grab it. It's good stuff. And again, really look forward to seeing you crack a couple of heads in the Senate over the next couple of weeks and months on all this nonsense.
Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
All right. So here's the deal. In the middle of that last interview, we had a system freeze glitch. And sorry about the weird little pause. If you're watching this later, you have no idea what I'm talking about because we cut it out because we're that good. Tomorrow, we're rebuilding like the entire system because the show's grown so quickly that now we can afford a computer that, God willing, doesn't do that. So we're working on it. But that all said, we have got a lot to dig into regarding some new information that is just now coming out. An actual show-changing situation here. More illegal immigrant groups are getting money, and Democrats are going all in on it. So don't go anywhere. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast.
The Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIBC.
All right, this does play into the theme, so you'll forgive me if it sounds a little like a segue. Welcome back to the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal. Limping through our last night with the old setup. There's a lot of stuff changing, a lot of huge things coming down the line. Senator Schmitt's not the only guy from the government joining Ted Cruz and Ron Johnson as regular guests here on TKC. Big things coming. Not money flowing to illegal immigrants, though. You see, I'm a legal citizen. So is my producer. You're a legal citizen, right?
As far as you're concerned.
I know your last name's Alvarado, and you're questionably brown, but you are a legal citizen, correct?
Going back a few generations now.
Very, very good. Great. I should hope that I know I did marry your sister.
That's an announcement for everybody.
Yeah, breaking a few things there. So, aside to the actual breaking side of news that I'm treating very seriously, so according to the New York Post, Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson, who has an approval rating that is on par with eating moldy apples, has stated flood relief applicants will not have to disclose their immigration status, and he has forbade any local or federal authority, which he doesn't have any power to do, from asking Chicago residents, you can't say Chicago citizens, I guess you can pull a Lori Lightfoot and say Los Angelinos. Angelina Jolinos. Chicago, Chiracians, whatever you want to call them. Apparently, you can't ask if they're a legal immigrant or not. This is par for the course for a couple of reasons. Gavin Newsom is taking huge amounts of heat as the governor of California, not only because he's desperately focused right now on being Mr. Trump pseudo anti-clone guy on social media, but also more industries, more corporations are fleeing California because instead of the money going towards disaster relief, preventing additional disasters, I chatted about that with Andrew Wilco over on Salem today, instead of actually correcting some of the systemic issues like homelessness, which Gavin Newsom has promised to solve, I kid you not, every single year since 2011. He hasn't been, again, running the state all this time. That's just how long as an individual in California he's been promising to fix homelessness. It's just getting worse. Money is instead flowing towards illegal immigrants. It's one of the key reasons why Bed Bath & Beyond, known as one of the key places to buy a college freshman dorm materials, is now leaving California entirely, no longer to open any retail stores. So Marcus Lemonis has issued a statement as the executive chairman of Bed Bath & Beyond saying, quote, "We will not open or operate retail stores in California. This decision isn't about politics. It is about reality. California has created one of the most overregulated, expensive, and risky environments for businesses in America. It's a system that makes it harder to employ people, harder to keep doors open, and harder to deliver value to customers. The result, higher taxes, fees, and wages that many businesses simply cannot sustain, and endless regulations that strangle growth. Even when the state announces a budget surplus," and here's the catch, even when the state announces a budget surplus, it is built on the backs of ordinary citizens who are paying too much and businesses who are squeezed until they break. The money is flowing towards illegal immigrants in the state of California, in the state of Illinois, and in the state of Massachusetts. Before I get away from the California situation, though, too quickly, there are additional mortgage fraud cases that are being opened up from Ed Martin's office in Washington, D.C., some in California. The mortgage fraud is going to get a lot more intense. So the elites are all breaking the law and living high on the hog, while many of the common Americans, the regular people who are citizens of this country, are scraping by. I'm not getting any illegal immigrant money. Are you getting any illegal immigrant? No. And if you are, stop it. You shouldn't be getting money from the federal government. As a registered member of the Native American tribe of Cherokee, not the Elizabeth Warren kind, I could be getting essentially free dental. I don't take it. Is it because I'm super moral and wonderful? No, I have a conscience that gets really, really icky. I feel awful if I'm ever a burden on anyone. Taking free services at the behest of your fellow American, forcing them to through tax dollars, is not popular. Now, let's get to Massachusetts, because Boston's Mayor Michelle Wu, whom earlier I said was bragging that Boston's illegal immigrants made it one of the safest big cities and like the least worst of some big cities, she's decided to come out and say that not only will she not cooperate with the federal government, but you guessed it, Massachusetts and Boston dollars are going to continue flowing to illegal immigrants, because if they don't, then it's oppression or something.
Boston received a letter from the Attorney General of the United States on official letterhead from the federal government threatening to prosecute city officials and withhold federal funds unless we cooperate with carrying out mass deportations.
Again, I've actually seen this letter, and no, it's not mass deportations, though, according to the polls, many Americans wish that it were. I would love to see just one major Democrat who doesn't talk like Gavin Newsom not get in front of the public and talk like Captain Kirk. Mr. Spock, I received a letter from the official letterhead from the Attorney General of the United States. They want to deport the Vulcans, Mr. Spock.
It seems like they still run off the playbook where microphones were still just like soup cans. Just having to yell loud enough to actually be heard by the crowd.
This Saturday, the Brooklyn Dodgers are carrying out an attorney general's promise to deport everyone outside the stands of the left field. Anyway, Mayor Wu.
At a time when this federal administration is already causing so much fear and harm in our communities, these threats are serious and consequential.
Ah, yes, it was necessary to say they're both serious and consequential. What's something consequential that's not serious? Like an entire warehouse of whoopee cushions burning down? Consequential, but is it serious? Huh? Legal questions for the scholars, I'm sure.
But our same communities have told me, loud and clear, that silence in the face of oppression is not an option.
Ah, great, amazing, bold, stunning, brave, love it. Every single bit of the whining and the crying, it has flowed over to Connecticut. And here's where we get to some of the consequences that are serious for these actions. So Connecticut State Representative Corey Paris posted on an Instagram live video information that led to the doxing of ICE's real location, warned illegal immigrants to stay vigilant, i.e. avoid law enforcement. That's illegal. Revealing personal information about law enforcement individuals, endangering law enforcement, that's also illegal. And this was pointed out by Chaya Reichik's team over at Libs of TikTok. And, well, it turns out that the federal government, who is paying attention right now, instead of investigating Catholic parents, paid attention. And now there's an investigation being filed, perhaps charges impending. So what did that mean? The senior senator of Connecticut, Richard Blumenthal, who I can only assume smells like mothballs from the 1920s, decided to lead a press conference today standing in solidarity with state officials who broke the law.
Lieutenant Governor and Governor Lamont for bringing us together and this showing of support, which I think speaks volumes. The old saying, a picture is worth 1,000 words. This picture says to Connecticut and the country, Corey, we are with you. We have your back. You are not alone, because every one of us could have been the recipient of those kinds of threats.
That could have been me. Again, this is a man who chose to break the law. He doxed federal officials, and he then advised illegal immigrants on how to evade the law. You can't do that, especially as a representative. That could have been any one of us. Yeah, if you break the law, that's like LaMonica McIver, who's also really upset right now after body slamming a federal agent. Mazie Hirono gets out in front of the gun and goes, that could have been me. Like, yeah, if you're body slamming people, I'm sure it could have. I'm going to get emails about that impression, aren't I? Look, I can't just do impressions of some kinds of people. I can't just be Bill Clinton and Trump all day, producer Nick.
Gotta add it to the list.
Yeah, thanks. All right, radio crew, we got to send you to commercial. God willing, the stream stays up. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal. Now, moving on a little bit to other ways that Democrats stand up for each other. All of this plays back into, why are the Democrats not gaining any momentum as the opposition party? The only Democrat in the Senate whose numbers have trended upward in the last couple of days is Chuck Schumer. Because Fetterman's are already pretty high for the party. So after that, what do you have? Chuck Schumer, who the rest of the Democrat Party currently hates, is the only one who trended upwards. The rest of the Democrats are focused on what? Yes, the redistricting fight in the Texas House. Now, right before the show began, the Texas House did, in fact, pass the redistricting measure. Brett Baer over at Fox News broke the story.
Breaking tonight, Texas Republican legislators have just won their fight over redistricting. Just moments ago, the state House vote is now final. The bill aims to provide 5 additional congressional seats for the GOP. Correspondent Garrett Tenney shows us what's happening from Austin, Texas tonight. Good evening, Garrett.
So again, thanks to, by the way, I get a question every once in a while why I play the full context of clips like that. It's because if I get a clip from somewhere, I like you to know where it comes from and who actually put it out there, not trying to steal content. Something that many of the other shows in our contemporary group don't necessarily follow. But I digress. Kamala Harris, she's back, baby, and leading the Democrat Party by doing the thing Kamala Harris does best. Take phone calls on video. Yeah, that's right. Here's Kamala Harris calling the Texas House when they ran away like little girls crying and screaming and, to Illinois, California, and whatever. Kamala Harris is giving them some words of inspirational wisdom. Oh, wrong clip. There we go.
And you really are inspiring so many people. And I just want you to know that you are among those who history will reveal to have been heroes of this moment.
She meant to say revere. She couldn't think of the word.
And do what you are doing. You have the right instinct. You are talented, and you are principled. I
love it. So those in history will revere. It's to revere. They will revere your actions. Might be, what Kamala Harris, again, famous for her phone call where she giggles and says, "We did it, Joe." Amazing. I really do love it when people trust Kamala Harris with a microphone. I can't even speak full sentences some evenings. I might be a little discombobulated, but I certainly don't call Democrats who are losing and tell them history. Again, you don't even know them, any members of the House of Democrats in Texas. History is going to reveal you to be super duper. It's like she's consoling a little league team who got spanked.
I think it's really impressive how inebriated she is to continuously produce these phone call videos.
How sauced do you think she was?
At least more than Nancy Pelosi at that moment.
More than Nancy Pelosi? I don't know. More than Nancy Pelosi's husband? That's the real question. Asking the real journalism stuff. By the way, I forgot to mention one of the best parts of the illegal immigration money flowing, having consequences. Gavin Newsom, talking about Democrat leaders right now, the party, his big response from his press office to Bed Bath & Beyond leaving is, and I quote, "F you, bye," end quote. And Democrats wonder why the approval ratings aren't up. All right, well, we're going to head over to commercial, pick up the radio crew. Don't go anywhere. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast.
I'm sorry, Miss Jackson. Ooh, I am for real.
This is the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIBC.
In the grown-up world, when, Blumenthal isn't crying into his sweater and Chris Murphy isn't tweeting, all of this National Guard stuff is just a stunt to distract from the economy being a mess. Health premiums about to go up by 75%. Epstein cover-up. Just like clockwork. Harry Ensign pointing out on the polls that as far as Americans are concerned, the first and the second issue Americans are caring about is not the Epstein situation, which, again, a federal judge just ruled again that Trump's request to unseal the grand jury transcripts not allowed. But anywho, what are the rest of the adults in the world focusing on? Well, what are we actually getting into here? Because individuals like Molly Jong-Fast believes that the actions of the Democrats right now, they need even more Chris Murphys and Zoran Mamdani's and Kamala Harris's. That's who we really need. Molly Jong-Fast, who one time called herself a conservative analyst. Now she is the weird cat lady. I'm sorry. Now she is one of the weird cat ladies over on MSNBC, MS Now. Molly Jong-Fast, go.
Breathing into a paper bag. I'm trying to calm down a little bit, John.
I'm not going to let that laughing like the Wicked Witch of the West go by.
Giving Kamala a run for her money.
John just quoted a remarkable stat out of the New York Times that in the 30 states where they track voter registration over the past 4 years, Democrats have lost to Republicans in every single state. Why?
So this is the $24 million question, right? Why are Democrats not... why are the polls bad? Why are they not breaking through? And I think it's a couple things. I think one is the people who are breaking through are brave, right? They're talk brave. Like human.
Yes, they're brave. Yeah, like Moana. They're brave. Like insert character here. Like Harry Potter. Oh wait, we're not allowed to like J.K. Rowling anymore. Like Katniss Everdeen. They're brave.
That's why I can't make it
the
as a
case,
I'm not brave enough.
And again, it's like Pritzker's chief of staff told me. It's not
the fat man's underling told me.
Necessarily left versus center. It's fight versus cave. And the people who fight get support. And the people who cave or are mealy-mouthed or are, very sort of corporatist-y, that crew, the crew that's afraid, cannot breakthrough, does not appeal to voters. The question is, it's only going to be for people who really feel authentic, right?
Sherry's never been afraid of a shadow.
Exactly.
Because what the Democrat Party is known for is authenticity. You know, when they're taking private jets to Illinois out of the Texas House, you know, when you have individuals like Pete Buttigieg taking a ton of money, and building 7 electric charging stations. I got to tell you, I'm just not seeing the major, incredible, bold moves that are going to resonate with the rest of the country. Just not seeing it. I'm not seeing any of this super duper ultra bravery. Again, the person that she's criticizing here is Chuck Schumer. And he's the only one whose approval numbers went up this week whatsoever on the Democrat side of the aisle. So the idea they just need to fight harder, they just need to be worse, I don't think so. In the real world, while the Democrats are struggling with this, the Russia-Ukrainian negotiations, along with the trilateral, again, the European delegation just left. Now we are moving towards a possible meeting between President Putin of Russia, President Zelensky of Ukraine, and Trump brokering a major peace deal. And there might be a bit of a problem, not in the way that many individuals might have seen before. It all does come down to China. And Beijing is really, really, really upset and nervous about this. And they're showing it in a couple of different ways here. So right now, China is showing economic indicators that are, it's really hard to tell hard economic numbers from a closed off communist country whose government controls all of the statistics whatsoever all the time. But there's additional signs coming forward that Beijing is slowing down economically despite increased trade with the United States. That's a huge warning sign, because essentially it means that Russia and China may not be enough, and that's the kicker, may not be enough to keep both of those economies afloat, which means that theoretically, well, Beijing might have some interests in foreign policy beyond just Taiwan, the Indo-Pacific, and the United States. And maybe how China might be getting involved in this entire Russo-Ukraine, the trilat, and entire international security headache and a nightmare, to be completely honest. We're going to head over to Virginia Allen. Of course, she is our senior news correspondent, as well, of course, as the host of Problematic Women. Virginia, you've been following this stuff way too close for comfort. How are you doing?
Doing well, Tony. You know, it's, I think, a little bit of a myth that, at least it's a myth during the Trump administration, that August is quiet in Washington, D.C., because maybe that used to be the case, but we're all running around and, gosh, it's hard to keep up with the president following his having all of these 7 European world leaders at the White House, plus Zelensky. No rest for the weary, but it's exciting times.
No, and it may just be the sleep deprivation talking, but I believe that you shot me a message that you were going to be having a conversation with Deputy National Security Advisor KT McFarland, of course, answering to Acting National Security Advisor, among a lot of other things, Marco Rubio. So what's kind of the scuttlebutt from the administration right now regarding what's in play with the Russo-Ukrainian situation? It's crazy that this could be getting more complex by the day, but that certainly seems to be the case.
Yeah, well, there's so many players involved here, so it is really complex. And then when you start adding in some of those other outside factors, it gets even more complex. The main outside factor being China. So I had a conversation, as you mentioned, with KT McFarland. She served in the first Trump administration, and we were talking about what security provisions, because everyone's finally on the same page that, yes, Ukraine needs security provisions. So what could that look like? There's a lot of areas and ways that could look. We can talk about that in a second, but I want to touch on this China piece, because what KT McFarland said to me, she was like, you know, Trump here is really trying to thread a needle, because he doesn't want to push Russia so hard that he essentially pushes them, in her words, into the arms of China, the very happy awaiting arms of China. And I had another conversation today with Dean Cheng, He's a China expert, written multiple books on China. He's on Fox News all the time. And I was asking, what role is really China playing here? And he said, well, China, for their purposes, they want to see this war continue. They don't want it to stop because they're worried that the moment it does and Russia's sort of handled, that then the U.S. is really going to turn its attention on China and that they will receive more pressure from the United States. And so it's to the advantage of China to just keep the U.S. distracted with Russia. So they want the war to continue.
Well, there really is a lot of focus on Beijing, which has never made any situation in negotiation simpler. And of course, we were talking about McFarland right now. I believe it was in May that Deputy Alex Wong was replaced by, I think, Robert Gabriel to be the current Deputy National Security Advisor. There's a lot of moving going around, not because of some of the chaos of the first Trump administration, but because Trump really wants to have all of the principal players to exude the maximum amount of pressure on the different regions. This is why threading the needle is so critical here. What are some of the things that he's going to have to thread between Russia and China in the real sense? I hear a lot of the bluster about what Susan Rice or Hillary Clinton thinks is threading the needle between Beijing and Moscow. But based on what we know from the ground, what's the actual brass tacks here?
Yeah, so there's a few different options, and specifically when it comes to getting down to what these security concerns look like, that's the big question on the table, and that's really the negotiating factor here right now, right? Everyone says they're needed. There's this forthcoming meeting between, it's supposed to happen between Putin and Zelensky. The talk is sort of, well, Putin's trying to push that back. Those meetings need to take place in order for this deal to come about with these security guarantees. So people keep referencing Article 5. What does that mean? Well, Article 5, when you actually look at it, this is the NATO agreement. When you actually look at it, it says essentially that if one country is invaded, that those other countries respond in the way, I have the exact verbiage here, it says deems necessary. So they can use military strength if it is deemed necessary. So I was talking to the Heritage Foundation, Victoria Coates, national security expert on this, and she was like, so it could be an Article 5 protection would look like the U.S. may being the key word, use military strength against Russia if they act in aggression towards
Ukraine. Kind of like an Iranian situation where, you have the Navy lob a couple of missiles, you have a B-2 bomber fly a little closer than the one did to Putin, that kind of a situation.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's all in the language, right? Because, Trump is never going, ain't it in the fine print, But, Trump is not going to approve, he's been clear, he's not going to approve U.S. boots on the ground, not going to approve Ukraine being admitted in as a member of NATO. And so he's not going to say the U.S. will 100% absolutely respond if Russia again acts as an aggressor against Ukraine. But even just that language of we have the option to respond, we might do it, that could be enough to deter Russia. The other option
sorry, just on this other option here, because I've got a hunch as to where you're going. What I've heard a lot of, what I've seen a lot of, especially in your writing, is the possibility that British and French and maybe Dutch troops might be stationed as kind of a stopgap like we see with the U.S. and South Korea. This is where China's involvement in these negotiations gives me pause, because just like how the Soviet Union was the antagonist in the Cold War to the Americans, it was the Chinese who were the antagonists to the Brits. And we saw that really get almost into a hot war in the early 90s. I mean, it was the subject of a ton of media. There's always been that nervousness between the Brits and the Chinese. Do you think that Beijing might throw a red flag, no pun intended, at the perhaps involvement of the British in peacekeeping in Ukraine here? Or am I just seeing smoke and mirrors?
No, I don't think there's no doubt that China's not going to jump up and down by having British boots on the ground in Ukraine.
Yeah, but if you've seen their Olympic gymnastics team, that jumping up and down is pretty impressive.
They are very talented. They're quite talented on the gymnast floor. We have a lot of work to do in preparation for the 2028 Olympics here in the United States. But
I feel bad for anyone listening to this trying to just get straight to the news.
Like, where are these rabbit trails going? But no. I mean, Tony, I think that's a critical point. Of course, China's not going to be thrilled by any troops being on the ground, again, because they want to keep this war going. They don't want to see resolution. And it's really, in so many ways, up to European allies and up to the United States to be putting heavy pressure on Russia to say, look, because there's probably going to be pressure on Russia from China to keep the war going. So then the US and European partners, it's their job to put even more pressure, essentially to be the lesser of two evils for Russia.
On regard to the secondary pressure from China, I know we've gone on a little bit longer than maybe we'd intended to in this hit, but this is a crucial question, because if China can economically influence the Russians, that changes the likely outcome. It's a huge factor here. But we saw that the Trump administration was able to suggest that America's just not going to buy anything from China due to the escalating 140, 240% little tariff war that flared up earlier this year. Could you see the Trump administration is the economic lever of, we're going to cut off your trade, you're going to be broke, and you're going to be hungry? If he does that with China, is that enough to force China away from the egging Russia on to continue the war? This is the key question.
It could help. You can never predict, though, I think, what China is going to do. They have proven, like Russia, I think they've proven to be, in some ways, highly unpredictable. Their main concern is security of power and ensuring that they maintain not only actual power, but the appearance of power, the appearance of control.
For the viewers and the listeners, I want to make this clear. That's not a non-committal answer. It sounds initially like, well, I mean, really, there is no way to predict this, because Trump could go into the India and Pakistani conflict and say, you're going to be broke, you're going to be poor, and force two nuclear-armed powers rallying for a major international war, forces them both down, and then to shake hands and both recommend the guy for, a Nobel Peace Prize. And then we've seen the same with other countries around the world, that the economic lever that has solved 6 conflicts so far may not be enough to move Beijing. That in and of itself is a massive statement. That's a massive point of analysis.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's critical. And I think, economics usually plays a massive role in these conversations, of course. And that's why Trump likes using tariffs so much, because he recognizes that it works. It brings people to the table. It forces hands. And there's a lot of factors at play here. And Tony, before we go, I will just mention briefly, one of the most interesting points that I heard from Victoria Coates in conversations of what security protections for Ukraine could look like is related to border security. She actually said there needs to be a really secure border guarantee for Ukraine, but with that border that they share with Russia. This could look like technology sharing, could look like boots on the ground, said could even look like a physical wall. But she was like, you know what? Security guarantees that don't secure that physical border, that just leave it wide open to Russia coming back in again, those really aren't security guarantees. For her, that's a non-starter. And for someone like Victoria Coates, who's worked on these issues for years and for President Trump, bears a lot of credence what she has to say on that front.
So normally this is the place where I would list your most recent article on this, but there are several articles that you've put out from this. Again, there's a reason you're a senior news producer, how you're throwing out all of these articles, all of these conversations coordinated together. Thanks for that. We're going to list all of those that we can in the description below, and maybe just your author page, because these articles are coming out hot and quick like it's Waffle House. So Virginia Allen, again, senior news producer, and then, of course, the host of Problematic Women. Really great stuff. Thanks for dropping in on us. We'll be back in just a second. Got to pick the radio crew up from commercial. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast.
This is the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIBC.
My oh my. Some nights you just have a couple of glitches here and there. Thanks for sticking with us through them. I know that I wouldn't choose the show that we have a sitting U.S. Senator on or some of the great updates from Virginia to have these glitches, but alas, kind of the end of an era for the show. A lot of our equipment has been doing a really stellar job, but some of it is I'd say served its purpose. So we're going to be taking a little bit of construction, which reminds me, tomorrow evening's show, before we get to some of the things I really want to talk about in this segment here, tomorrow evening's show might be a little bit unorthodox, but you're not going to want to miss it. So all I can say is definitely set a timer and come back for tomorrow evening's show, because it's going to be a smidge different. Now, that said, a couple of really hilarious really hilarious stuff from the culture side that you guys sent in. I don't think I would put these in awful tweets. Someone asked yesterday, and it wasn't David, I think it was Dawn, asked why the kind of racist clinging was going on in the Democrat Party while they're simultaneously saying that all Hispanic people are good for is like slave labor, but at the same time, they're lecturing Republicans about being racist. The short answer is it's a kind of a guilt admission sort of a situation here. So in short, you have a lot of individuals over on the left who have made it their entire shtick to apologize for being racist as though that makes, I don't know, whatever, like that makes you think they're a better person because they've acknowledged that they're awful. But then once they get away from the apology, in the back of their mind, they are kind of like really, really racist. And they'll admit it to you. Here you go.
If you're white, yes, you are racist, even if you think you're woke.
As a former public administrator who used to be in charge of teachers who spoke like this, everything wrong with the entire Democrat Party can be summed up to talking to people in baby voices as though you are a wonderfully inherently moral person.
We all benefit from oppression. Pretending you're not racist only makes racism grow.
So, first of all, really pitchy and horrible. Started in one key, ended in another. Started in A flat, ended in some awkward bastardized version of B. But anywho, the idea that that's going to convince anybody not being racist or thinking you're not racist only makes racism grow. Sources, dude, trust me. Another great question that I particularly enjoyed coming in was about the crime issue, because I happened to say on a recent show, I got some flack for this, that I wanted red state governors to deploy National Guard units to blue cities within their borders. In Ohio, in Indiana, in Missouri, I wanted to, in Kansas, for instance, and the reason that I said that they should deploy the National Guard units to particularly violent blue cities in red states, like Indianapolis murder rate, not low. It's just not. On some evenings, Indianapolis is worse than Chicago. So, so one of the reasons that it particularly matters in this instance, as I said, is that blue state governors that are like moderate blue state governors, that I use with lots of air quotes, we'll go ahead and include Jared Polis, although he's not moderate at all. But Josh Shapiro of Pennsylvania, who at least engages in a lot of dialogue with the right, and then Andy Beshear of Kentucky. If they refuse to send National Guard units to Louisville, Pittsburgh, Philadelphia, then, it just might reveal that while other states are showing success with getting certain crime-ridden areas of mass rape, violence, looting, the inner city activities we've all come to know and enjoy, then it would be not just a political win, but it would also showcase who's doing things for performative reasons and who's doing things for legitimate reasons. And the leftist argument to this, the only counter argument to this at all, is that Republican men are weak because they are scared of cities. That's what I heard, apparently. Because I don't want people shot in downtown Indianapolis, which again, there's a lot of violence in downtown Indianapolis. That's not just me. Those are the just rote county statistics. And Marion County, which Indianapolis proper sits in, that's not a red county pumping out those statistics, John. So to answer this particular question and show you a little bit of the common left-leaning response is just that if you don't like violence, then I guess you're just a big wussy or something.
We truly are not bullying MAGA men as much as we should.
We're clearly not bullying you enough, Megamind. Sorry, just yowie, the middle part's not for everybody.
Because what do you mean you're scared of cities? Cities? Like downtown? You're scared of that?
We're in agreement that forehead is massive, right? That is a 5-head, dude.
It doesn't help that she's parting her hair in that way.
Dude, during election season, you have to register that as advertising space with the FCC. Holy
Once
cow.
again, what's with the lack of dress?
Oh, the Anna Kendrick,
Yes.
like the Anna Kendrick cut, where it's like, I promise we're gonna get emails. Continue with your argument.
You're supposed to be the protectors, right? Aren't you all the one pushing the gendered bullshit that men have to protect women? What are you protecting us from? I strap my toddlers into a car and drive them downtown literally weekly and think nothing of it.
At 2 a.m? At 11 at night? Or in broad daylight? I love this argument. Well, I was just there yesterday. That's true. And I walked to Union Station where individuals have been stabbed. I have witnessed corpses in the daylight. When I taught in Milwaukee, when I was just fresh out of my education program, taught at this very tiny Christian kind of academy excellence type deal in Milwaukee. And in the daytime, Milwaukee, especially in some of the rougher wards, it's the most beautiful part of the city. But at night, Fight Club would be putting it nicely. It is a horrible place. But again, you know, I once took my toddlers there, so therefore, point proved.
Somebody protect her from whatever makeup she's using.
But you, my guy, won't go within a 5-mile radius without your Glock and being strapped up?
It's just strapped. It's not strapped up, honey.
I think we should be bullying them more. That seems like snowflake shit to me. These big, strong men get their...
She had to do jump cuts because she couldn't keep her thoughts together. And again, for those who might say, Tony, why are you going after like physical whatever? If you get out in front of the camera and say, we need to bully this group of people, we need to treat them terribly, you are fair game. And you may have starred in an animated movie voiced by Will Ferrell. But I digress. We'll let as the comments put it appropriately, the Bond villain, Libertarian Dragon, why does she look so surprised? Well, I suppose if you have the memory of a goldfish, there must be a lot of stuff that surprises you on the daily. So moving on from that, there was one other really great question that we got this last week, which is kind of the design of the show. Why did I decide various things when we started doing the show? Because again, in 2 years, it's gone from nothing to top 5 in the political podcast side of things, largely due to both the podcast audience, and then the other side of that largely is our phenomenal live stream audience, especially the YouTube crew. The Rumble crew has also become a particular favorite of mine recently. And one of the reasons that I did the show kind of the way that we decided to is I've always believed in just slapping a bunch of stuff on the screen until I think it looks good, and then trying to keep it really clean. So at least as far as like the logos and the design, we don't really try to do a lot of change ups on y'all. We don't try to, there are some shows that do different stuff every single week. Always try to make it so that when we play a video, it's always on the my right side of the screen. And then the camera cuts over and it looks nice,
We truly are not bullying.
At least I hope it does. But something that has constantly bothered me though, that I've gotten questions on before is, for example, why I use the colored text in the Chiron. Again, those who have only listened to the podcast, you ought to watch the live stream. They're annoyed that the bonus tonus text is like a kind of aqua color, or that I color certain parts of things and there's some color in it. Every once in a while I'll say things like, hey Google, set studio lights to Aurora. And then the color changes. We get like bother. It's not very professional. Why aren't you just like CNN and everything's slate gray and sad? And the reason is because I despise what corporate graphic design has done to the entire industry. Case in point, I don't know if you have seen this. Cracker Barrel has redesigned their logo. Only I could take a segment about why are your graphics so wacky to, what sucks? Cracker Barrel redesigned their logo. This show's for free, ladies and gentlemen. Cracker Barrel made the decision to rebrand their logo after a long, long, long time. Again, the original, we'll play the graphic here in a second. What is Cracker Barrel known for? It's known for eating at what looks like a garage sale. It's known for having a restaurant that is decorated in the style of rustic America. There's stuff on the walls. There's paintings. There's a musket over the fireplace.
Smells like a million candles.
It smells like a million candles. We'll get to the gift shop in the front in a minute. Going to Cracker Barrel, there's supposed to be checkers in the barrel table with the checkers, and then the peg game where you're an ignoramus. It sucks if you leave 4 or more pins in there. It's just supposed to be a corporatized old-style diner. That is what Cracker Barrel has been for a long time. Also, they have the best tasting maple syrup of any restaurant. And if there was one thing that you will be allowed to call me gross over, when I was little, I would drink those syrups straight. In fact, I may have done so within the last couple of years at one point. I just tipped one up at a restaurant. Bad decision. Thank God I stopped, or I'd be doing Liberty Medical commercials right about now. I digress. Cracker Barrel has decided what they need to do with their restaurants is just make them look like every other restaurant, just booths and tables. That's it. I mean, seriously, the inside of the new redesigned restaurant, and they also took the logo, and we'll see if we can actually get it up here on screen and then pause the video. So you can see they have now turned the Cracker Barrel logo, which again had a guy sitting next to a barrel that one might store crackers in the Old Country store, because you should be able to buy old candy and the candles and the weird old record selection, and then whatever place you're in, usually your college's blankets and sweaters and memorabilia, and then the weird toy section that may not be legal in 50 states and commonwealths. As far as Cracker Barrel's rebrand has gone, they've decided to make it Oh Charlie's, but worse.
It's a belt buckle.
And their logo design, as a guy who dabbles in graphic design, and I say dabbles in graphic design because I do. I like making logos and seals and various things. It's something I rather enjoy. To just turn your entire logo, which is very distinctive, into a rounded hexagon and darker font, who are you appealing to? Who are you going after here? So here's the CEO on Good Morning America, who looks exactly like you would guess. Picture any HR representative from a blue state. The kind who lets AI do her work sorting through resumes. It's why no one's getting hired. That will drag you into the office at 8:30 a.m. to tell you, I'm sorry, if you take off the glasses, this was my old boss at Indianapolis Public Schools, who they appointed to be the director over me despite the fact that she'd never taught a science class, but she still thought that she was incredibly brilliant and smart. That is this person. They all look this Karen aspect. I guarantee you that she complains constantly to her HOA. So here she is gaslighting the country, saying, actually, the entire country, employees, store managers, customers, they're falling over themselves to tell us this is the most wonderful decision we ever made in our whole lives. Here you go.
The feedback's been overwhelmingly positive that people like what we're doing. I'll give you another soundbite. I actually happened to be in Orlando last week with all of our managers. We bring them together and once every other year. And the number one question that I got asked, Michael, was, how can I get a remodel? When can I get a remodel? How do I get on the list?
First of all, the idea that what managers from all over the country, and by the way, Cracker Barrel's got some Indiana history. The Corridon Cracker Barrel is where the Justice for Brad's Wife meme story and saga comes from. Just a little meme history there. Shout out to Internet Historian. And Cracker Barrel's a Midwestern and Southern institution for sure. I'll never forget Tim Hawkins' bit on Cracker Barrel biscuits. So good they make you want to slap your mama. Again, it's an American institution. No one's asking for Cracker Barrel to remodel. No, I don't believe you. Also, that's not what a soundbite is. That's an anecdote. But anywho, she's like, when can I get a remodel? Please make us look like a sad beige O'Charlie's. Said no one ever. Applebee's with its license plates on the wall has more personality than these redesigns.
Really? So because the feedback and the buzz is so good, not only from our customers, but from our team members. They want to work in a wonderful restaurant. So we're doing everything for our guests and our team members.
No.
Julie Messino, it's wonderful to have you here.
Pleasure to be here.
Thank you for answering those questions for all the Cracker Barrel fans out there. And a lot of.
I'm sorry. I hate morning show hosts like that so much. I despise it. You guys have seen me do interviews. You close up. Sometimes interviews are like really awkward. If I ever start doing that, hey, we're just so happy that you came here, and I just really appreciate. Producer Nick gets on me all the time for essentially having RBF, resting grump face, during some interviews because I'm not thrilled with the answers that I'm being given. And there's a difference between being respectful as a host and, lying to your audience. We're so happy that you're here today. Really appreciate all that you're doing. Dude, she just crapped on the stage and said, yeah, our customers and our employees and the manager, they love it. I guess those buildings would be easier to clean if there's no personality to them, but I don't really know of any Cracker Barrels that were running around wiping down the knickknacks and pictures. All of the old soda advertisements.
I mean, even cigarette advertisements.
What are they going to do
walls?
with it? Dude, I will take... So if there is a manager of a Cracker Barrel that is being forced to remodel, and you watch the Tony Kinnett cast, or you work at a Cracker Barrel perhaps, and they are going to do some kind of a secret, get rid of all the stuff sale, Hey, you reach out, you go to TonyKinnett.com, TonyKinne. Look, it's at the bottom of the Chiron right now. TonyKinnett.com, KINNETT.com. There's a little message area you can click on, contact. You reach out, we will definitely get some cool metal soda, cigarette advertisements. Boy, that'll get the FCC really upset. But we'll get some of that stuff. Because having culture and texture, two things, is not awful. All of these culture rebrand logo designs, they suck. They're not good. I don't like them. Again, a little bit of personality, and I like things to be clean. Again, the font for the show's all in capital letters, and I try to do things at least clean enough. But man, after we replaced the Chip and Joanna fake shiplap that used to be behind me when the studio was in the house to like some wood paneling kind of a thing, it looked better. My goodness. Again, my backlight is usually amber or this aurora borealis kind of a thing. There ain't nothing wrong with a little bit of culture and texture. And by the way, how is the food? Brad sent a message and then he retracted it, but you're too late because I already saw it, Brad S. He said, how's the food there? I've never been. It's okay. It's all right. I recommend the portion sizes have gotten smaller over the last 5 to 10 years, but the Grandma's Sampler is delightful as a breakfast. The pancakes, again, don't sleep on the pancakes and the gravy. They do a buckwheat pancake, or the pancakes and gravy. The pancakes and the syrup. The biscuits and gravy is okay. The salt
hash
gravy
brown casserole
doesn't have anything. Oh yeah, hash brown casserole. If you're not averse to onions, hash brown casserole is delicious. The way they grill their chicken used to be like the only restaurant that did it. Their chicken and dumplings is good. The meatloaf is good. Depending on the restaurant, the fish fry can sometimes be good.
It's exactly what you need when you want
a diner
home cooking,
whose flavors are normalized, and it's fine. Sometimes you just crave Cracker Barrel. After my wedding, we stopped at a Cracker Barrel on the way down to the honeymoon because I was told that's just what I need right now. And you know what? She was right. She was right. So I will point out one very excellent comment from our interview over with Senator Schmitt. That's just excellent. Someone said, "Hey, I thought that you were caught up in the rapture when the screen cut and the chair was empty." That's freaking hilarious because as a Baptist, if I do ever disappear and the clothes are here and my face and head is not, I have been caught up with an instant to glory, and tribulation follows. So. Those things said, very, very funny comment. That brings me to one last question for mail time that I can't help but answer. Did you hear Trump's comments on whether or not he was... Essentially, Trump had said that he got in front of the country and said, I'm trying to get the Ukrainian-Russian war ended because he's like, I'm trying to get to heaven. The idea is trying to stack up some good deeds to go to heaven. And I've been asked my thoughts on that like 3 times. So Carolyn Levitt went out in front of the country and said, yeah, sir, I think he's just trying to, aspiring to go to heaven, as we all should. 2 things, theologically, really quick. Is what Trump said endearing? Absolutely. I think it is a kind-hearted thing that he is trying his darn tootinest to get this war to end and making personal sacrifices to be self-deprecating as Trump. For him, not an easy thing. Dude's got an ego. But his self-deprecation and saying, I thought it was going to be really easy, and it turns out it's just a bit harder to get this war wrapped up than I thought, but we're trying. That takes a level of humility, and I do have a lot of respect for that. Does doing good deeds get you to heaven? Absolutely not. Nowhere in Scripture does the Bible say that someday that you are going to have a big scale in heaven, and St. Peter's going to weigh your good deeds and your bad deeds, and if your good deeds outweigh the bad deeds, you get into heaven. Nowhere in any scriptural text of Christianity, including in the Catholic Apocrypha, does it state that having good deeds gets you into heaven. Absolutely not. According to the Christian faith, according to Scripture itself, only by accepting the salvation through our Lord Jesus Christ, who died and rose again 3 days later as a sacrifice for your sins and mine, because we're all sinners, having come short of the glory of God, only by accepting that free gift of salvation, accepting salvation specifically from Christ, that's how you get to heaven. And there's a reason why, by the way, just because since I'm answering the question, I might as well point out. Ephesians chapter 2, verse 8 and 9, Paul makes this really clear. For by grace, the mercy of God, are ye saved through faith, believing and accepting that sacrifice. Not of yourselves, lest any man should boast. Ephesians 2:8, you cannot earn your way to heaven. Any of them. In Islam, you got to earn your way to heaven. In Judaism, depending on who you talk to, you got to earn your way to heaven. In Hinduism, you got to earn your way to being reincarnated as something better and better and better until you reach nirvana. And if you're a Mormon, then you believe that if you do the right things, then you'll get to rule a planet someday, which is another bowl of worms. According to Scripture, though, Christianity, the entire point is that you are powerless to save your own soul. And so I genuinely hope and pray, just as with every single president of the United States, state official, period, that the proper route to salvation, and I would bet balls to bones, as the saying goes, that someone has already mentioned that to the president since he made that statement. You can't earn your way to heaven. Otherwise, then I wouldn't really need to go, because it would be in my power to save myself. No, absolutely not. That's why the sinless life of Christ sacrificed for me. That's why it matters that Christ was sinless. But anyway, that's enough of Theology Wednesday. Sorry, Michael Knowles. Enough Theology Wednesday with Tony Kinnett here. Appreciate you guys stopping by. I'm amazed that we didn't actually lose anyone through my theology explanation there. So those things all said, you guys have a wonderful evening. Tomorrow, show's going to be very interesting. So got a whole computer system set up to rebuild. I suppose, say a very fond farewell to Charles, the black computer who's been running this show for the last couple of years. And by that, I'm sorry, the case of Charles is black. He's not Charles the black guy. I got a question about that once. It was a weird Newsmax interview. Another story for another time. Have a wonderful evening. The Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal until they fire me. Nationally syndicated and first on 93 WIBC. Take care.